we have to do on our campuses. One highlight is workflow. We'll talk about that a little bit more. There are edits in business rules. When transactions enter KFS, they're on electronic documents. We call them eDocs. And for each type of eDoc, there are business rules. And unless a transaction conforms to your business rules, it will not go into workflow and, of course, not be posted. Well, just for example, you wouldn't want an equipment item charged to a labor subcode. That might be a business rule. There are import-export capabilities. You can import data. You can import transactions in the right format. You can export data. You can download onto Excel spreadsheets out in your department, for example, which is a nice capability. There can be attachments to documents, electronic attachments. You scan documents and attach them. You might attach a grant award to a new grant account. You might telling you what the rules are for that award. You might attach a donor's letter to a restricted account, so you would forever have available electronically the instructions from the donor and so on. There are sub-accounts and sub-object codes. FRS and KFS both have accounts and object codes, very similar. But in KFS, you can further divide an account into sub-accounts. You can further divide an object code into sub-object codes. We recommend this for end-user flexibility. Someone out in the field wants to keep track of things in more detail than you need centrally, for example. It's very easy to permit them to use sub-accounts and sub-object codes to get the level of detail that they want. There is a complete transaction audit trail that will always be archived. You can go from a value in a high-level report and go right back down and find the transaction or transactions that caused those values. And you can see from the workflow history who approved that transaction. There are automated entries at each update. In FRS, we do these at month end. In KFS, we do them each update, which is typically every night. So your file is always up to date, always reportable. Your overhead, for example, is charged as transactions occur. You have real-time access to pending entries. We call an entry a pending entry if it's been entered and it's passed the business rule test and it's in the queue awaiting workflow approval. It might stay there a day or two or three. Well, you can still have access to that entry from the moment it's entered. And you can take the effect of that entry into account on your balances. You can say, I want to see the balance available in my account after all pending entries as well as posted entries. So you really have almost real-time access to anything that's been proposed as an entry. You have 24/7 access to balances from a browser anywhere you have security approval. The technology platform is beyond my area of competence, but we have had this peer-reviewed by thought leaders in IT, in higher ed, and they're unanimous that it represents the best current thinking of the technology environment for a system like this. If you compare FRS to KFS, there are going to be a lot of similarities. A few differences. The general ledger and the subsidiary ledger, as you know, are separate in FRS. In KFS, they're combined. So instead of two accounts, you'll have one account. However, on the reporting side, you can still report SL data, and you can still report GL data separately. In fact, if you're providing a report to someone out in the field, you probably don't want to give them GL, general ledger data. You want them to see their budget, their transactions against it, their encumbrances, and the available amount, just as you do in FRS. The reports are very similar. For accounts payable, purchasing, bids, and commodities in FRS, all of this is combined into one module. The acronym is PURAP, Purchasing Accounts Payable, in KFS. And a very powerful module. We'll talk a little more in a minute maybe about that. Fixed assets are handled in FRS, but capital assets management in KFS goes further. It will compute depreciation, make the entries, for example. Now, there are going to be a lot of similarities, which we'll know in a minute when my slide transitions. Indiana University had a system FIS, but before that they used FRS. And we did use FIS as a point of departure for developing KFS. So just like FRS, KFS will have an account, a simple ID number. It's 7 digits in KFS, one more than in FRS. The object code is 4 digits in KFS, just like FRS. Attributes of an account would include a chart, organization, higher ed function code that would help you with your FASB, GASB reporting, your iPads, restricted, unrestricted indicators so that year-end programs do the right thing with each account. Every account belongs to a fund group, usually through a sub-fund group that reports up to a fund group. There can be multiple charts. If you have a medical center, you may have a large auxiliary enterprise, you may have different campuses geographically. You can have multiple accounts, multiple charts, and they're automatically consolidated. And just like FRS, if there aren't enough attributes out of the box, and there will be quite a few, we can add attributes. They're called extended attributes in KFS. So a lot of similarities. Your functional people will feel quite at home, I think, making the transition. The technology environment, of course, is very different. Some other features that are in KFS that we didn't have in FRS. E-commerce, B2B, business to business is integrated. The early implementing institutions are using Cyclist. P-card is integrated. Nearly everyone has P-cards now. The workflow with routing options, very flexible workflow system. The ability to add attachments, I mentioned that, and sub-accounts and sub-object codes. All kind of are natural extensions of FRS. Now, contract and grant, you could have some pre- and post-award capabilities with Kuali systems. FRS was post-award and KFS is post-award. But for pre-award, there's another Kuali system called Kuali COIUS. And this system will handle your proposal development, your budget projections internally as you prepare an award, a proposal to submit to a sponsor. Then when that award comes through, you'll be able to kind of automate transferring that data into KFS, or the post-award features take over. Now, Kuali COIUS also works on compliance. There'll be help for IRB, your Institutional Review Board, your hazardous materials, your animals, managing subcontracts. So between the two, you would completely cover pre- and post-award if you have that need. The COIUS system was developed at MIT. It's in use by a few dozen universities, but it's being transformed into a Kuali module. And as I mentioned, the web-based